Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on when you're seeing this. This is Chapter 9, Principles of Hair Design. This is a really important chapter. I'm not saying you're going to know every single detail of this chapter, but this is the chapter that's going to help you make decisions on when you're creating a haircut or a hairstyle or a hair color vision, right? When you're creating that vision, it's one thing to be able to go in and go, oh, you have a uniform haircut. I'm going to give you a uniform haircut. You're good to go. But when somebody comes in and says, I don't know what I like, I don't know what I need, I don't know what works best for me, it's your decisions that determine what that style is going to look like. And that's where the principles of hair design comes in. So let me go ahead and do my spiel. This is Real Talk with Miss Wendy. I do not know every question in this book. I do have an answer key next to me, so if I don't know one, I will go ahead and tell you the answer. If there's something that you don't understand when I go over it, it is up to you to get into the book and look it up so that you understand. These questions come directly from the book. I'm going to give you 25 questions. SEMA, when you take your test, if you're using SEMA, which most students do, you're going to get a bank of questions of like 100 to 150, and they're going to pull from that bank to decide which questions are yours, whether it's 20, 30, 40, 25, what doesn't matter. That's coming from that bank of questions. So when you take your test, you use a lot of critical thinking skills. Sometimes you'll find the answer to one question within the question or the answer of another question, right? So that can kind of give you a clue if you're kind of lost. Another thing you want to look out for, and it shows it right here, the word except, and there's also an always. When you have except, that means all three of them are going to be relatively the same, while one is going to stand out as different. Okay, and then always is obviously it's going to be an always situation. If you do not know the answer to the question, if it's an absolute guess, you're always going to choose B. B is the most common answered question. And if you choose the same letter every time, you're more likely to get a few of them right rather than kind of Christmas treeing it. So with that being said, again, this is Real Talk with Miss Wendy. I highly recommend that you listen to this or watch this the day of your test, kind of get your brain going in the right direction. It might pick up a few keywords that you missed the first time around that will help you on your test. So let's go ahead and get started. This is Chapter 9, Principles of Hair Design. All of the following are reasons cosmetologists should study and have a thorough understanding of hair design principles, except. So what that means is that all three of these should have a study and thorough understanding of hair design principles, except one, right? So let's go ahead and read through them. I don't like reading all the answers as much as you don't, but it's the only way to get through this question. It's one of the questions that pops up a lot on tests. It'll say, these are all reasons except, whether it's principles of hair design, whether it's permanent waving, hair color, doesn't matter. It pops up a lot. It's a common question. Okay. So these are all reasons why a cosmetologist should study hair design, right? Understanding hair design principles allows cosmetologists to know why a particular hairstyle will or will not be the best choice for a client. Okay, well, that's true, so it can't be except. Understanding hair design principles assist cosmetologists in achieving their styling vision. That's true. Understanding hair design principles enables cosmetologists to convince their clients to try the hair styled in a way they don't typically have it styled. I question that one. The word convince does not sound like a professional, right? Let's go to D. Understanding hair design principles gives cosmetologists the skills to create looks that emphasize their clients' best attributes while minimizing areas of concern. All right, that is true as well. So to me, the correct answer is going to be C. Let me look at my answer key. That is correct. C is the answer. So we're not trying to convince our clients, right? We are trying to educate our clients. We are trying to know the principles of hair design so that we can give them that information, but we're not there to convince them of anything. the book says. Behind the chair, are you convincing? Not necessarily, but it's a similar term that people may use interchangeably with educating, right? So you just have to keep that in mind. Number 2, all of the following are planning except, I'm going to turn this up because I don't know if you guys can hear me. Oops, wrong way. There we go. I don't know if that helped, but all the following are planning steps in bringing a design to life except taking calculated risks, try and try again, seek inspiration, consult a mentor. We did not try and try again, I don't believe. Actually, it might be consult a mentor. All the following are planning steps in bringing a design to life except consult a mentor. I think that one is our answer. Yes, consult a mentor. So in the chapter, there are, I think there's 5. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's 5 different planning steps in bringing a design to life. The only way you're going to know those is if you've read the chapter, right? You're going to have to open your book. You're going to have to read the chapter. If you do nothing else, then at least read through the chapter. I get it. You don't always enjoy the information. It's kind of difficult sometimes, but that's the route you have to take. Consulting a mentor, although that is a good thing to do sometimes, that has nothing to do with your planning steps. That's a very specific term, planning steps, in your book. All of the other things have to do with planning steps except consult a mentor. All right. 3, which planning step in bringing an artistic design to life is defined as the stylist deciding which tools and techniques are needed to achieve their design? I believe it's work the plan. So we got work the plan, seek inspiration, try and try again, or create a plan. So deciding which tools and techniques are needed, let me just verify that 3 is A. Deciding what tools and techniques are needed to achieve your design is what they call working the plan, right? All of those are steps in planning. Whether you're creating, you're trying it again, you're seeking inspiration, all of them are steps in planning. The one that has to do with tools and techniques is work the plan. That's where that stands out. So your answer to number 3 is A, work the plan. Number 4, which element of hair design relates to the mass or general outline of a hairstyle? Okay, so if we're talking about the general outline of a hairstyle, that's going to be your form, right? So space is what's in between in your form, line is which direction we're going, texture is the amount of curl. So the only one that makes sense is going to be form. Let me just verify and make sure. Yeah. All right. Form is correct. So all of the others, while they do have, they are elements of hair design. The only one that relates to the general outline of the hair design or hairstyle is going to be form. All right. Number 5, which design element is the directional wave patterns or illusion of motion in the hair? A, design lines. B, design texture. C, form. Or D, space. Let me just verify. Yeah. All right. So the design element is the directional wave pattern or illusion of motion in the hair. What do you think that sounds like, right? So if I have motion in the hair or wave patterns, that's my texture, right? I either have a coily texture, straight texture, curly texture, wavy texture, whatever the case may be. That's going to be your texture. So the answer to number 5 is B, design texture. Number 6, a stylist is designing a hairstyle with an interesting focal point that the stylist wishes to highlight. Which design element could the stylist consider to draw the eye to the style's focal point? We're talking design lines, form, space, or design texture. Let me just look real quick. Okay. Design lines is what's going to create your focal point, right? So the lines are either going to be horizontal, diagonal, horizontal, or vertical. So your design lines is how you bring interest to your focal point. And just as a side note, you don't want too many focal points, right? For me, I tend to pick 1, maybe 2 focal points. And that's it. And that's where I start my haircut, or that's where I start my hair color generally, is where my focal point is. The most important part of that style is where I'm going to start. So, the design element that you need to use to consider to draw the eye is going to be your design line. So, that focal point is created by the lines you put into the haircut, if that breaks it down for you. Number 7, what colors should a stylist consider using to create the illusion of more hair volume? Okay, so that's a very specific answer. It's in your book, and I will tell you the answer is A, light, warm colors. Let me just go through why the other ones are not correct. Dark, cool colors is going to collapse, right? If the hair is dark and cool, everything's going to kind of bring it in, it's going to collapse. Lighter and warmer colors with darker and cooler colors is going to create dimension. Okay. And hair color cannot give the illusion of volume, which is absolutely not true. It's a very, very good way to give the illusion of volume. Using your light, warm colors are going to create that. So the answer to number 7 is going to be A, light, warm colors. Which principle of hair design is defined as the comparative relationship of one thing to another? All right, so for number 8, we have balance, rhythm, emphasis, or proportion. If I want something to be relatively comparable from one thing to another, that's my proportion, right? So if everything is proportionate, then they are relatively the same from each other, right? One's not too big, one's not too small, so the top of the head's not too wide, the bottom of the head's not too narrow, vice versa. We have proportion. All right, number 9. What negative outcome could result if a cosmetologist fails to consider emphasis when designing a hairstyle? Okay. A, the style could have too many points of focus, which keeps the hairstyle from having an area of interest. Well, that's true. B, the style could be too small or large in comparison to the client's head and body. That is true. The hairstyle may be too different from one part of the head to another. The hairstyle will have a pattern that is inconsistent. Let me just look. Okay. So, what negative outcome could result if a cosmetologist fails to consider emphasis when designing a hairstyle is that you're going to have too many focal points, right? That's something that I said a little bit earlier, is if you have too many focal points, the haircut just gets lost or the hairstyle just gets lost. You really want one, maybe 2 focal points, and that's it. If you have a focal point over here, and you have a focal point on top, and you have a focal point in the nape, and a focal point in the length, right? That's all going to create too much busyness. So when we're designing our hairstyle, you want to have 1, maybe 2 focal points. So the question for number 9, the answer is going to be A, too many points of focus, which keeps the hairstyle from having any area of interest, right? If you're overwhelmed with looking at too many things, you can't look at any one thing because you're looking at too many things. That's what they're talking about. All right, number 10. Here we go, another long question. We love those. All right. A client with a petite frame and narrow hips and shoulders is discussing a new hairstyle with a cosmetologist. The client describes a popular voluminous hairstyle as an option. What should the cosmetologist consider when discussing this desired style with a client? Okay, so they have a petite frame. They have narrow hips, narrow shoulders, right? But they want something that's got a lot of volume. So we're going to go through our options. The cosmetologist should consider whether the volume of the hairstyle will achieve harmony by creating symmetry with the client's body type. I like that answer. We'll keep going. The cosmetologist should consider whether the rhythm of the style will create an interesting focal point. True. The cosmetologist should consider whether the hairstyle will adequately emphasize the client's body type. Or the cosmetologist should consider whether the hairstyle will be proportional to the client's body type. Okay, so look at A and look at D. They're very similar to each other, right? The missing word in A is right here, proportional. Okay, when you are considering your style with a client who has narrow hips and narrow shoulders, you want to make sure that that style is proportionate to the client's body type. I'll give you an example. One of the salons I worked at many years ago, there was a receptionist, and she had long, beautiful, long blonde hair, very big, beautiful waves, long hair. She also had a chunkier frame, shall we say, right? She was very womanly in the hips, okay? So she came to me and she said, I really want to cut my hair off into a short bob, a stacked bob, right about the chin length. Her face was proportionate to the stacked bob. Not a problem. What happened was after I cut her hair and I took the cape off and my client stood up, or my receptionist stood up, her behind grew by like 20 pounds, right? Because I took all the hair off the top of her head, everything else got a lot bigger. So you have to be very careful when you're thinking of proportions between the hairstyle and the body type. Yeah, you don't always notice because they're under a cape, right? So those are the things that you're paying attention to when they walk in the salon. You're not reading your client's body up and down, but you are paying attention to where are their shoulders sit, where do their hips sit, excuse me, where do their hips sit, those type of things. We want the style to be proportionate to the body type of the client. So your answer is going to be D for question 10. Number 11, the standard reference point that is the widest area of the head. This is going to be something that you will see over and over and over again. You will use it when you're doing your haircuts, when your teacher is describing a haircut to you. They're going to use all of these words. But the one that is the widest area on the head is going to be your parietal ridge. Number 11 is a parietal ridge. Parietal ridge is right about here. As you can see, that generally is the widest spot on the head. All right, number 12. If a cosmetologist places a comb flat against the nape, the location where the comb leaves the head is, so if I take that comb and I put it directly across the nape of my head and it goes up, where it leaves the head is your occipital bone. That big bone in the back of the head is your occipital bone. So the answer is A, occipital bone. Number 13, if a cosmetologist is styling the hair below the occipital bone, on which area of the head is the cosmetologist working? So what is the area below the occipital bone? That is your nape, right? That's what's called. It's called the nape. So 13 is B, the nape. That's the area below the occipital bone. Number 14, which description is true of very curly, fine hair? All right, let's go through them. Very curly, fine hair cannot be straightened by blow drying. That's not true. Blow drying can be effective on very curly, fine hair, but is often easier for the stylist than for the client. Okay. Very curly, fine hair responds well to a blow dryer and a thermal flat iron, or very curly hair responds well to blow drying with various brush sizes. The only one that really makes sense is C. Let me just verify that. Yeah. All right. So we know that hair it can be straightened by blow drying, right? Fine curly hair can be straightened by blow drying. That can't be true. So to say it cannot is not true. We're looking for something that is true. Blow drying can be effective on very fine curly hair, but is often easier for the stylist than for the client. That's insignificant. And very curly fine hair responds well to blow drying with various brush sizes. Okay, I guess that's true, but it's not the most correct answer. That's something that Milady does quite frequently. They're going to throw answers that are correct. The statement is correct, but it doesn't go with the question. The only one that actually goes with the question is C. Very curly, fine hair responds well to a blow dryer and a thermal flat iron. Boom, we're done. Number 15. What is a problem when trying to style straight, fine hair? All right, let's go through them. Straight, fine hair can appear dense, making it difficult to design a style that uses long hair. Okay. Straight, fine hair hugs the head shape, which can separate the hair, revealing if the hair is too long. Okay. Straight, fine hair becomes heavy when wet, so a style must accommodate the way it will hang when wet. Straight, fine hair lacks body and has limited elasticity, so there are limited styling options if left in its natural state. Let me just take a look. Okay, that's what I thought. All right, so your answer to what is a problem when trying to style straight, fine hair is that it lacks body. It also has limited elasticity. Fine hair does not stretch very well, right? So there's going to be limited options for that client if they leave it in their natural state. So that is the answer is D. 16. A stylist is preparing to perform a permanent wave chemical service on a client with straight, coarse hair. The last time the stylist performed this service with the client, the results were not satisfactory as the hair did not curl as much as was intended. Which of the following is a consideration the stylist should take into account before performing the service again? Let's go through them. We love these long ones. The client's hair pattern and texture are voluminous, so to maintain the curls, some interior weight should be removed with texturizing shears. That has nothing to do with our perm. The client's hair pattern and texture are responsive to blow drying, so to maintain the curl, blow drying should be kept to a minimum. That has nothing to do with the question. The client's hair pattern and texture are moisture resistant, so the chemical services may take longer to process. I like that one. The client's hair pattern and texture respond well to rollers and thermal styling. That has nothing to do with a permanent chemical wave. The only one that has to do with it is going to be C. Let me just verify that. Yeah. The client's hair pattern and texture are moisture resistant, so the chemical service may take longer to process. What they set up here was the hair did not curl as much as was intended, right? What did they not take into consideration? They didn't take into consideration the moisture resistance. Okay, so that's your answer to number 16 is C. Moving on to number 17. What styling options will best fulfill a client's desire to make an oblong face appear shorter and wider? You have to know what an oblong face is, right? Oblong is it's really long. So if I want it to appear shorter and wider, what do I need to do? That's what the question is asking. So choose a chin length style that is close on top of the head with more volume at the sides. All right, that's not bad. Let me just look. Choose a style with height on the top volume, on the top, volume at the temples, and a soft bang. If my face is oblong, do I want more height on top? Probably not, right? Choose a style with the hair close to the head, no volume, and a silhouette widest at the jaw and the neck. Well, I'm going to do that is create a triangle off my oblong. I don't want to do that. That doesn't sound correct. Most styles will work for this face type, but the cosmetologist should consider other features like head proportions or whether the client wears glasses. We do consider head proportions. We do consider whether the client wears glasses. But this part that kicks it out is that most styles will work for this face type. If you have an oblong face, you want it to be not a lot of volume on top, so close on the top of the head, and more volume on the sides, because the idea of face shape is you want everything to look very oval is your ideal shape, right? They say that's the beauty in people is when their face is mostly oval, as well as proportion and all that. But you want the head to look oval. So I have to envision if my face is long, I want to bring in the top, widen the sides to make it appear more oval. So your answer should be for number 17 is A. Number 18. How should a cosmetologist determine whether a client has a square facial type? So what they're asking is what's a square face? What are the characteristics of a square face? A. Look for facial contours that are narrow at the forehead and wide at the jawline. That sounds like a triangle to me. Look for facial contours with a narrow forehead, extreme width at the cheekbones, and a narrow chin. That looks like a diamond, so that can't be it. Look for facial contours that are wide at the temples, narrow at the middle third of the face, and squared off at the jaw. Well, I like that one. Look for facial contours with a wide forehead and a narrow chin line. That's an inverted triangle. So that's can't be it. So I like C. Let me just verify. Yes. C is your answer. You want something to be wider at the temples, narrow in the middle, and a little bit squared off at the jaw. Right? So that is what it looks like if someone has a square facial type. Got it. Number 19. A client with a round face type will be best complemented by a hairstyle that shapes the hair close to the head and adds volume between the temples and the jaw. Okay, my face is round. Do I want to put the hair close to the head, add volume between the temples and the jaw? Not necessarily. Let's see. Adds volume at the temples and some height at the top. If my hair is, or excuse me, a round face, I don't necessarily want to put volume at the top and volume at the temples because that's going to create more of this pear shape, upside down or triangle shape. Adds volume on the top of the head and is close to the sides of the head. I like that one. Is full across the jawline and forehead, but close at the cheekbone. That doesn't sound proportionate, right? If the face is round, we need to elongate it and close in the sides, right? So there's this idea. People say that when you were talking about like bangs, depending on your face shape, you either want your curtains open or your curtains closed. So in this case, when we have a round face type, we want our curtains closed, right? So we're going to add volume at the top, but we're going to get it close to the sides of the head. Number 20. What lower face proportions are best complemented by hair that is full and falls below the jawline? So what lower face proportions? We're talking about this area right here. Do we want a receding chin, a long jaw, a large chin, or a round jaw? Let me just look real quick. Okay. So the lower face proportion are best complemented by hair that is full and falls below the jawline. So here what we're talking about. If I have a receding jawline, right? It's very small. Do I want the hair to go way past that? That's going to emphasize that distance. It's going to emphasize the fact that it's small. Do I want a longer jaw if I'm going to wear the hair very long? Well, that sounds reasonable. I like that. We'll go back. A large chin. If I want to wear my hair, if I have a large chin, do I necessarily want everything to be full and long? No, because the chin is already large, so I don't want a lot of volume. Or a round jaw. That's basically the same issue again. So the only one that actually makes sense is going to be B. Let me verify. Yes, B is correct. Moving on. Number 21. What hairstyle best complements a profile that has a receding forehead and a receding chin? When we're talking about profiles, you're going to have convex or concave. Convex means everything is receding at the forehead, comes out really wide or big, and then recedes at the chin, right? It's convex. Concave means it goes in, right? It's like caving in. So the forehead is larger, the middle area is tucked back, and then the chin is larger. So what lower face proportions, let me just look real quick. What lower face, oh, that's wrong. What hairstyle best complements a profile, 21, that has a receding forehead and chin? All right. Most hairstyles will complement this hairstyle profile. So we're talking about a convex. Arrange curls or bangs over the forehead and create a style that is close to the head at the nape while hair moving forward in the chin area. I really like that one if we have a convex shape. Softly style the hair at the nape with an upward movement while de-emphasizes the hair on the forehead. Uh-oh, my daughter's calling. Excuse me, I'm going to have to pause that. D. Arrange curls or bangs over the forehead and softly style the hair at the nape of an upward movement. The only one that really makes sense is B. We're going to arrange the curls or the bangs over the forehead, and we're going to create a style that's close to the head at the nape and the hair moving forward in the chin area. Because if that face is convex, we've got to put some hair where it's very long, right? Where it pops out. We got to put some hair. We got to push that hair forward to conceal the fact that it's convex. So your answer is B for 21. The length of sideburns should be parallel with the top of the upper lip, aligned with the occipital bone, equal on each side of the face, adjusted to appear even in length. Right. So personal choice for sideburns. Doesn't matter if it's parallel with the top of the upper lip or aligned with the occipital bone. We can kick those out. Equal on each side of the face. We do want them to be equal on each side of the face, but it has to appear even in length. Your ears are not exactly the same on each side, and therefore your sideburns are not going to be exactly equal, right? You're not going to put 1-inch sideburn on this side and a 1-inch sideburn on this side. You're going to use the ears, the parts of the ear, as a reference so that they appear to be equal in length. Okay, so the answer is D for 22. 23. The 5 basic elements of three-dimensional hair design are line, form, space, design texture, and the last one, you just have to know these. It's going to be color. Let me just verify. Yeah, color. So C is your answer, color. That is the 5th element in your three-dimensional hair design. Number 24. The basic hair textures are fine, medium, and coarse. None of the others make sense. That's something that you will repeat over and over and over and over and over again. Hair texture is fine, medium, or coarse. Okay? To measure symmetry, the stylist should divide the face into how many parts? This question is a little bit confusing. We're not talking about proportion. We're talking about symmetry. Proportion would be 3. Symmetry would be 4 equal parts. Okay, the equal is kind of your clue. Symmetry has to do with 4 equal parts. So 25 is definitely C. All right, that is all 25 of our Chapter 9 Principles of Hair Design. Hopefully this helped you get ready for your test today, and it gave you a little bit of insight on how to answer some of these questions. Stay tuned for Chapter 10 because we're going to do another one. Have a great day, guys.